matter? Oh, hi, Amish Dumbledore? Yes, that is what they used to call me, but I've changed a little since then, and I've changed my name along with it. I'm called Arcana now. Arcana, yes. A wizard named Arcana. Correct. Isn't that a little on the nose? Perhaps, but I do like for things to be precise. Speaking of which, let's talk about your time traveling. Oh, yeah, I've been drinking this crap for so long and jumping around to different time periods, and I don't feel like I'll ever get back home. I don't have any control over this. It just kind of sends me wherever. Yes, navigating through time can be difficult, and unfortunately, the rip in reality that has been sending you through time, well, let's just say it no longer exists thanks to changes in the timeline, and so your traveling mug has reverted back to its simplest form. It can transport you through space and somewhat limited through time, but it certainly can't take you back the 2 years that you need to travel. But if the timeline's changed, then how can I still
time travel hatter, don't think too much about it.
Okay, fine. So it's just a regular traveling mug now. So what do I do? Am I stuck here? In order to unlock the full potential of the mug and get it to take you back where you belong, you will have to develop a much stronger understanding of the nature of time. How do I do that? Time is a curious thing. It has many facets, and it's impossible to fully understand it to its fullest extent. As such, stories often look at it from one perspective, but those perspectives can be quite fascinating. Many stories have dealt with trying to figure out the nature of time, and many of them have created quite fascinating and interesting depictions of how time works. Some of these are time travel stories, and some of them just look at the way that time flows and how things change over time. I believe that in order for you to fully understand how time works, you must look at some of these depictions of time. Some of the very best, perhaps ranked in a list of some sort. So we're basically going to do a top 10 list of time travel stories. No, Hatter, not time travel stories, and not stories, but just depictions of time within those stories, the ones that are the most interesting. Also, it's going to be a top 12 list. Why top 12? Because it makes for nice imagery. 12 hours on the clock, we can do sort of... That makes perfect sense. Okay, sure, whatever. So, when do we start? Well, as they say, there's no time like the present. Yeah, okay, I got it.
What's this?
We all imagine ourselves agents of our destiny.
Number 12. The Time Warp of Dr. Brain.
Dr. Brain thought he was merely teleporting himself into last week to find his car keys.
In the last review, we looked at the third installment in the Dr. Brain series, and we talked briefly about the first two games in the series. This is the fourth game, and in my opinion, the best game in the Dr. Brain series. The structure of this game follows more closely the lost mind of Dr. Brain. Instead of it being a linear game where you solve puzzles in different rooms, progressing through a castle or an island, as in the first two games, you have 10 puzzle groups that you have to solve, but that you can solve in any order and complete however you wish. There's also a story behind this game, although not quite as complicated as the lost mind of Dr. Brain. In this case, Dr. Brain has invented a time-traveling machine, and he attempted to use it to go back 1 week in time in order to find his lost car keys, and instead ended up transporting himself into 10 distinct time periods throughout the history of the world.
He hopelessly thrust himself into the unexplored regions of the space-time discontinuum.
Really messes things up really spectacularly. So now, presumably in order to refuel the time machine so we can get back, I don't actually know how it works, it's never explained, but this is just my speculation. In order to refuel the time machine, Dr. Brain, and you along with him, must solve a series of puzzles in each of these 10 time periods where Dr. Brain has taken on a unique persona to that time period. Once again, these puzzles don't have to be solved in any particular order, but we're going to talk about them in a particular order, the chronological order. First, the earliest time period, dating back to the very beginnings of life on Earth, we have primordial soup.
Welcome to where it all began.
In this game, Dr. Brain is a green amoeba trying to take over a particular part of the primordial soup from the yellow amoebas. So it's basically just a game of survival. The green amoeba has to essentially just beat the living daylights out of the yellow amoeba. But there are a couple of things that make this a little bit more challenging. First, throughout the primordial soup, there are little bits of food. If one of the amoeba eats the food, it undergoes mitosis and becomes two amoeba. And so your goal is to create an amoeba army larger than the yellow amoeba's army. There are also vitamins that can make the amoebas stronger, and viruses and bacteria which can make the amoebas weaker. Fast forward a few million years and we get to spelunking, where Dr. Brain is now a lungfish trying to navigate through an underwater cavern.
I hope you're a strong swimmer. Things could get pretty scary down there.
Being a lungfish, he can swim underwater but can't breathe underwater, and so you have to navigate the lungfish to find air bubbles and occasional air pockets so that he can survive to get all the way through the maze. Also, there are predators and other obstacles along the way, as you would expect with this sort of thing. Next, we get to the age of the dinosaurs, where Dr. Brain is a lizard trying to protect his eggs in lizards and eggs. Dr. Brain has acquired a number of eggs, which he wants to, of course, hatch into baby lizards. In order to do that, he has to keep the eggs warm, which he does through creative use of little pockets of heat and lava in the ground.
You are a slave to routine, but some part of you has been thinking well enough to overcome obstacles to hatch your eggs. That's a mouthful.
But the temperature of these pockets fluctuates frequently, and so you have to keep an eye on them to make sure they're not getting too cold and the egg eventually dying. Next, Dr. Brain is a mammal, a beaver to be specific, in Beaver Dam, where he has to, well, build a beaver dam. Dr. Brain must now collect little piles of sticks that are flowing down the river and build them into a dam, while at the same time keeping logs from destroying the dam and chasing away other animals who also want to destroy his dam.
Your limbic system is now actively functioning as you get emotionally involved in this game.
Damn it. Next, we have Caveman Rock, where Dr. Brain is finally a human being with opposable thumbs and the ability to reason. So what does he do? Start a band, of course. Dr. Brain is the bass player in a 4-person band, and they have to rehearse for an upcoming gig. Unfortunately, none of them know the music yet, and so they have to be able to play the music and read it in the correct order. So it's a lot like the music puzzle in The Lost Mind of Dr. Brain, but the difference is you're not dealing with traditional written notation, because of course it wouldn't have existed yet. Instead, you're dealing with a group of symbols which could mean anything, so you have to go entirely by your ear. Unscramble the music and get it in the right order so that the cavemen can play it, and you've successfully solved the puzzle.
Only human beings can compose, harmonize, and make music together.
Next, we go to the dawn of civilization with Monkey See, Monkey Do, where Dr. Brain is a person playing a word game against a monkey, actually technically an ape. This game involves placing letters on a grid to form words, and Dr. Brain then has to form more words faster than the monkey so that the weight will hit his symbolic head first. It's kind of a combination of a word game and tug of war. Sign language is also used in this game. If you click on one of the letters on the monkey or the ape side, then he will sign it in sign language, so you can actually get a glimpse of what his letters are supposed to be. And at a harder level, it's entirely done with sign language. Next, we go to the Dark Ages with alchemy, where Dr. Brain is an alchemist attempting to turn lead into gold. Actually, nothing quite that glamorous. He's attempting to turn one substance into another substance. You're given a sample substance of a certain color, amount, temperature, and pitch, and you have to turn another substance into that same color, amount, temperature, and pitch. You do this by feeding it through a contraption, each of the valves of which does a particular thing to one of these attributes, or more than one of these attributes, and going the reverse through the valve does the reverse of that thing. Figure out what combination of valves you have to use and turn it into the correct solution, or it turns into sludge. It can do that.
You are a chemical sensation.
And then finally we go into the near future with gridlock, where there are cars. How appropriate. How very appropriate. I should have just kept going with that. Dr. Brain is a driver, or actually probably a passenger, in a pink car on a particular grid of roads. All the intersections are programmable, and you have to program them so the cars will go the right way and get to their home ports without crashing into walls or each other, or the various other vehicles that make random trips throughout the grid. So kind of like Train of Thought from Lost Mine and Dr. Brain, except you can't change the intersections once the cars have started moving. In Space Station, we've made it to space and we're building stations out there. Kind of like 3D construction, you have to follow a model that is given to you and build the space station exactly like the model. Except in this case, the model is actually complex pieces of a space station and not just colored blocks like it is in 3D construction in Lost Mine and Dr. Brain. And then finally, Dr. Brain has evolved into a creature of pure reason. Just a giant brain who just thinks of things. Honestly, the things that he's thinking of are fairly mundane, like who won which amount of prize money, but you have to figure out what exactly he is thinking of. You have other brains in tanks who know one aspect of what the giant brain is thinking of, and then little brains who you can change to mean yes or no or maybe on the grid in order to figure out how the grid actually matches up with what Dr. Brain is thinking.
Oh, look at you! Will you just look at you?
And those are the 10 puzzles. Solve enough of the puzzles in each of the groups, and you've successfully refueled the time machine, or whatever it is you're supposed to be doing, and won the game. So, Hatter, tell me, what can we learn about time from this game? What, me? No, this is your review. How am I supposed to know? Come now, Hatter, think. Use your reason. What can we learn about time from the time warp of Dr. Brain? Well, I guess it does have a pretty broad range of time periods. It starts in prehistoric times at the very beginning of life and ends in the distant future when life has presumably reached the peak of evolution. And the puzzles vary and seem very appropriate depending on what time period they happen to be in. In the first 4 puzzles in particular, they are puzzles of survival. They're not puzzles that we would necessarily think of as traditional puzzles. They're more puzzles along the lines of an arcade game, something that tests your reaction time and your eye-hand coordination and your ability to use a mouse. But think about who the creatures are in those games: an amoeba, a lungfish, a lizard, and a beaver. Creatures who puzzles for them would just be how to survive, how to beat the other amoeba, how to get through this underwater cavern, how to perpetuate the species by keeping the eggs alive, how to build a habitat. It isn't until we get to Caveman Rock and the first real human in the game that we get a puzzle that isn't so much about survival as it is about, well, an actual puzzle. Thinking something out, logicking something out. And we see that in each of the subsequent puzzles until we get to the very end, where it basically is just a puzzle of pure reason. Each of the other puzzles has a purpose. In Caveman Rock, they're inventing music. In Monkey See, Monkey Do, they're inventing language. In Alchemy, they're inventing the scientific method. In Gridlock, they're trying to perfect technology. In Space Station, they're exploring space and building structures out there. And then, of course, in the last one, it's just logic. There's no particular purpose to it. They're just reasoning things out. We see the evolution of puzzles throughout time. And in that way, we see the evolution of life. We see that if we look at time stretched out on a broad enough canvas, we can see patterns start to emerge even as things continually change. In the introductory cutscene to The Lost Mind of Dr. Brain commented once that he believed that puzzles separated mankind from what he referred to as the common beasts. And we see that played out in these puzzles in a pretty profound way. So the understanding of time that I glean from this is that time is full of patterns if we only take the time to notice them. It's not full of absolute repeated segments necessarily, but there are patterns and there are certain things that remain constant through all time. I believe that's done it. Great, good. So what? Now we move on to number 11, right? No, your time here is done. You must now drink from the mug and move on to the next time in order to progress down the list. Okay, sure, whatever. I'll go with whatever. So, thanks for the help, I guess, and I guess I'll be going now. Indeed. And don't worry, Hatter. We will see one another again. In time. Yeah, right. No. Okay, sure. And I guess that concludes another game from my childhood. And also the beginning of this list. We'll do more. Might be out of order for you, but it'll be in order for him. See ya. I swear this all makes sense in my head. Really.